Anna, how long do we have?
We have as long as you want. I have a paid account. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey,
Mark,
Jennifer,
hi.
I have a
Uh,
paid account and a good strong cup of coffee.
I've got a good
Ready
strong cup
to...
of coffee. But one thing I also have is I have a husband who coincidentally is flying to London. So I have to bring him to the airport in an hour. But I'm gonna turn this over and you can stay on for the rest of the day if you want, because you can stay on as long as you want.
We could get a few cat stories in as well.
Yeah. Okie
But
dokie.
Anna, just to start the conversation, what came about was I mentioned the word microphenomenology, and you said you knew exactly what phenomenology was because you studied it at uni. Say more, Anna?
Oh, yeah, when I first came out to Utah and I was up at the University of Utah and I I ended up in the art department as was inevitable, and then I went through the whole art. I mean, I probably should have a degree in art because I was there for the full time, but I went into I applied to get into the graphic art department program, which, they only allow, they only take like 25% of the applicants. Um, and I was accepted. But at the same time, I mean, that's what my dad does. He's been a very famous graphic artist. And I was working with him and my stepmother, and then so I got accepted. And then I thought, well, what if I'm really interested in is nonverbal and specifically non-hierarchical communication. So I thought, well,
Yeah.
where could I study this? And then I thought, well, I'll try anthropology. So I shifted to an anthropology major, and uh, you know, basically wrote my program, and I earned that degree. And then I thought, well, what about philosophy? Philosophy would probably be really good for this too. So then I again went into philosophy department. I wrote a dissertation, and but my main interest in philosophy, became existentialism, of course, and that was the rabbit hole towards phenomenology. And at the same time, I was living at and studying at the Zen Center, the Kanzeon Zen Center, which was conveniently just a couple of blocks from the university, corner of South Temple and 13th East, as Jennifer knows, because it's in her neighborhood. Um, and phenomenology, for anybody that isn't familiar with the word, is just studying the self. So it's the same as Zen. Anyway, that was my.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, that's great. But is it the non-verbal study, Anna? Is that the key part, that it's the study of non-verbal experience?
For
Uh,
my vote, it is.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. It's all that.
Okay. But that, because microphenomenology is more about the non-verbal experience. But I just give you a little bit of background. So I s- I have a great Tibetan Buddhist friend who is a doctor of philosophy, like you, Anna. It started out that way, became a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, and now she's doing another PhD in microphenomenology. And her job is to study and put monks and long-term meditators into brain scanners or EEG machines and do this phenomenology interview. And so they're doing a study whereby they actually believe, obviously my friend and her supervisor, all Buddhists or Dzogchen practitioners, that you can quantify and stratify and rationalize experiences that people have, transcendent experiences. And so, I mean, that idea is fascinating because it takes it away from being hierarchical, then it's personal. You don't need somebody You don't need the Buddha to come along and say, oh, that's good, that's not good, or that's Makkya, or that's just illusion, forget it. And at the same time, there's some really important point I'm going to make now, and I wrote it down because it's that important, which is, so in Zen and Tibetan, similar, they say do not discuss any experiences you have. In Tibetan, it's Niam, which means experience. In Zen, they call it Makkya, which just means ghost cave or just a ghost experience. And they say, don't discuss it. And yet we know the teachers all discuss it, right? But they say the students must not discuss it. And now that is interesting. They also say you shouldn't cling to it. So I read neuroscience research recently that said not discussing your experience is the clinging. Discussing your experience is the letting go. And what they found was that when people discussed their experiences, something good and bad happened. One, they stopped clinging. Should I wait? Anna, somebody wanted to come in. Oh, Anna.
Unmute.
Okay, let's see. We've got a couple of people joining. Here we go. We have Jeff joining. I think he's in Seattle. And
admin joining.
We have admin joining. I think that is going to be Richard, and Richard's in, I believe, Portland. So we have West Coasters popping on.
Well, it's important, that point, so I'm going to say it again anyway, because I think it's quite hard to take on board that. In fact, I can't even remember exactly what I said, but I'll try and say the same thing again. Okay, are we sitting comfortably? So it's seen to be forbidden verboten to discuss, or taboo to discuss, your meditation experiences, even though the teachers discuss their own meditation experiences, usually at length, and tell you how many times they've had them. So what the research says is not discussing the experience is the clinging, the very thing we're told not to do. So we cling on to it because we remember it. We can't stop remembering it. It's in our memory. It's a very profound, probably even traumatic experience. But so conversely, neuroscience has shown that if we talk about the experience, we let go of it. Something else happens, however, and that is it loses its power of effect and affect. So if you had a good experience that led to a change in your life, that change can also diminish. So, and you lose the actual content of the experience and just have a very superficial glossing over of what it was, which is of no use whatsoever. So you have the worst of all the worlds. You don't remember the experience clearly. We don't get the benefits, and we just have a rather distorted memory of it. So what this PhD researcher found, who's also a Buddhist, is that if you do microphenomenally interviewing, you can elicit layers of experience that are hidden to the conscious mind. So it's not hypnotherapy, it's just delving deep. And you can let go of the clinging and see it more clearly. And probably the experience itself doesn't make any sense. And that's what we found in this research. So she did an hour-long interview with me, God bless her, and survived. But we picked an experience that was quite interesting. And the reason it was interesting was I had two, and we've only done the first one. The second one's also fascinating, just for what it could be used for. So the second experience was about lifelong physical pain disappearing overnight, but it wasn't without cause, and it wasn't without other things happening, but that's for another time. So the first one, I was smoking 20 cigarettes a day, drinking 100, 140 units of alcohol a week, which is excessive. And that was to manage long-term chronic physical pain in a very distorted and crazy way. But it worked. So I'm carrying on thinking this really is not a good idea. At some point, this is going to have to stop. Didn't stop. So April last year, or as we would go, once upon a time in a land far, far away, last year in April, I caught COVID really, really bad. And I actually couldn't believe it. And so I'm lying on a mattress on the floor because the pain is so bad I can't stand up. So I pulled the mattress on the floor, sleeping on the floor, lying on the floor, crawling over. It's a bed sit, crawling over to the fridge to eat, crawling to the bathroom to go to the toilet, and just staying there with a raging fever. Then as things got a bit better, I thought, God, I need a cigarette and a beer. So crawled over to the fridge, grabbed a cigarette. And I'm not allowed to smoke in the bed sit because it's the landlady doesn't like it. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to crawl down the stairs. And at the same time thinking, this is insane, but I'm still intent on doing it. And then I just could not get up. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to lie here. And I carried on doing a meditation that I've been doing for the previous year. And that meditation, again, is forbidden, if you like, in the Zen world. And it was, what is it? What is this knowingness? What is this knowing awareness that knows it's aware of having COVID, that knows it's aware of being in this bed? And I've been doing that for about a year and wasn't getting very far because I'd get a little bit, I'd say, oh, it's me, it's my awareness. And then I just conk out, swoon, and fall asleep. So I just persevered with that because I had the feeling that there was something in it and that I just needed to keep persevering. And the more difficult it became, because it was impossible, I thought, maybe there's something in it. So I just kept doing it, and I do it every single day, several times a day. What is it that knows it's aware of being aware? And you can point your finger at yourself and it's your own awareness. You try and stay there for 10 seconds and then you're gone. You either fall asleep, you go into thoughts, you can't hold it. But it's a fascinating practice. So I was just doing this and I thought, what am I going to do? Lying in bed, it turned out for 10 days. If I can't drink and I can't smoke, I know, I'll keep doing this. So I kept doing it. And then as I was lying there, this is not what I remembered. This is what I remember through doing the interview afterwards, because my friend was fascinated and said, we must interview, we must go through it. So I'm just lying there in pain, exhausted, and just very, very present. So I wasn't daydreaming, I wasn't thinking about anything. And I suddenly became aware that there's me here sitting on the bed, and there's something a few feet away next to me, sort of coming back to me. It's like suddenly there's these two parts of me are suddenly becoming one part. And I remember thinking at the time, just surprised, well, that's fun. I wonder what that means. But the effect of that was a few days later, I got out of bed. Well, actually, in that moment, I just said, oh, I feel completely whole and there's nothing lacking. And I just dropped the cigarette, dropped the beer, and I have not smoked or drunk since. And I've even changed my diet, my lifestyle. I became vegetarian mostly, and I eat 8 hours a day, fast 16 hours a day, go to bed at 9, 10 p.m., wake up every morning at 6. And it's not even that I try to do that. If someone said to me, Daniel, will you do this? I'll pay you to do this. I'd say, not in your life. I am never going to do that. And it just happened. So my friend who's known me for a long, long time said, she'd been telling me for a decade, stop drinking, stop smoking. It's not appropriate. You're a Buddhist. You're even a bloody monk. Stop it. What are you doing? You can't do that. And I said, oh, don't worry about it. Trungpa did it. It's fine. And she said, what's happened to you? And I said, I don't know. I just had this funny thing happen. Maybe I was hallucinating. And then that changed everything. She goes, but how did you keep it up? I said, I don't know. It's just like something changed in my brain. And so she said, we're going to do this phenomenology interview. So we did the interview. The interview was an hour. I couldn't believe how detailed it was. And then something came out of the interview. And it was, I remember lying in the bed. I remember feeling two parts of me came back together. I don't know what that meant. And then I remember thinking, oh, that's nice. I feel whole. And then I remember my life changing. With the interview, she said, but you don't remember the sphere. I said, sorry. She goes, the sphere. I said, what sphere? She goes, you said there was a sphere. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, listen to the audio again and read the transcript and go through the notes because she needs to write it up for a supervisor and she doesn't want it to be wrong. So I went back and looked at the notes, and I actually couldn't believe it that I'd said that. And I saw the video with me saying it. And so what happened was, in between this feeling of these two halves, what I call two halves coming back together again, that somehow had been disjointed, I thought maybe from a motorbike accident or something like that when I was a teenager, is I actually said, uh, well, I described an indecipherable sphere, which I experienced between the shift and then saying, oh, I feel whole and complete. And I completely blanked that out. So what she was pointing out was when we remember an insight or an epiphany, probably the key part of it, we just don't remember. And if we keep repeating that epiphany, we lose the clinging, of course, but we forget the actual most important part of it, the content. So she said, let's go back to it. So we went back to it. And I just described the experience as a complete blur. I have no verbal memory. It was like outside of my awareness, outside of time. It did, and I'm not talking like transcendent Zen experience, anything like that, because I don't remember any of that happening in any Zen experience. But she said, let's go back and look at it. There was no chattering, there's no discursive thinking. I was completely lucid, completely aware, except I didn't have any pain. So the pain had gone from my body briefly. I wasn't asking any questions. I wasn't asking, thinking of any thoughts. Exactly. Or reflecting on anything at that moment. But the sense of that wholeness was almost represented by the sphere. But I have no idea what that sphere is, and I still don't. I still don't understand anything about it. So if you want to say it's an epiphany that was clear, no, I have no idea. It's like absolute confusion. And I didn't know if it was in me or not within me, if it was separate from me or not separate from me. It was just all homogenized and undifferentiated. It's just really quite strange. And inside and outside, top and bottom, they were all confused. Like she kept saying, well, which way are you looking in the room? And I was saying, well, both ways, but neither way. But actually, I don't know where I am in the room. I mean, and so when I come back to that part of remembering an experience, you can't cling to it because there's nothing to cling to. It's just completely confusing. In fact, it hurts my head. But what I'd missed out was the essential part in remembering. So, so yes, it's correct. Let's not discuss our epiphanies, but it's incorrect to think that lets go of the clinging. But it's perhaps let's investigate them a bit more thoroughly and look at all the little details and then work on those. And then when you remember those more difficult details, maybe it gets clearer, or maybe you get something more from remembering the experience or talking about it. So, I mean, I decided I would never speak about this because I thought, A, people would think I'm crackers, or B, the experience would be as I thought. I knew it would happen previously, which is that it just dissipates and I remember some really strange parts of it. But I would say that this microphenomenology interview actually took away all the rubbish parts or the clinging parts or the non-essential parts and left me with the one bit that I couldn't remember and probably didn't want to remember because it's just too much of a head messer. So so it wasn't an intellectual insight. It was literally, oh, that's nice. It was just like, oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't even leaping up out of bed. It was just like, oh yeah, I'm whole, I'm complete, fine, okay. Oh, what am I doing drinking and smoking? It was like the person I became. I didn't even remember who Daniel was from before. It's like the smoking, drinking, late night, meat eating person had just died, but they hadn't disappeared. They just moved out of the way a bit, and this other thing. And I can honestly say, even if I talk to you now, I'm just lost for words because I can't explain what this sphere is. And in the interview, I said, this sphere is me, and I am this sphere. Not fear, sphere. And it's kind of this just impenetrable, it, indescribable thing. And every time I think about it, um, I'm actually back there again. And even that's interesting. So it doesn't diminish the experience, and it doesn't make me cling to it, but it makes me want to investigate it more, and maybe gives me more motivation to continue a change of lifestyle that's more ethical, more wholesome. And I think that's what gripped my friend, was that my lifestyle became more ethical and more wholesome. And she said, "Well, that's what Buddhists are meant to do." And I was like, "Oh yeah, right, okay." And then because we've got time, and did I raise a hand? Just before we do some other bits, I wanted to tell you about the second epiphany that happened a year later, this April, just gone. So the other one was April before. I'm continuing to do this. What is it that knows it's aware of being aware? What is it that knows it's in pain? And the reason being, I was on really strong prescription pain medication for 3 months. First opioids and then non-opioids because the opioids were too addictive. And then I suddenly got this letter from the GP saying, "You've been on them 3 months, you have to stop them now." And I just went into a panic and I thought, okay, I can go back to drinking, I can get illegal opioids on the street, or I can go to Dignitas and just call it a day. And it was really that bad that I thought, there's only those three options. I can't think of any other option at this point. And then my friend, who's an osteopath, retired, came over from Germany. He was staying with me. He said, "Have you heard about the vagus nerve?" I said, "No, I haven't heard about the vagus nerve." He goes, "Here's a book." I said, "I'm not going to read a 300-page book. I can't concentrate more than 10 minutes in pain." He said, "Okay, uh, what do you want to know?" I said, "What's the one exercise that works?" So he told me the one exercise that works. It takes 2 minutes. So I did that. And then I said, "Okay, that didn't work. What else am I going to do?" I know, I'll do Genpo's big mind process, but I'm going to do it differently. So instead of talking as the voice of pain, I spoke to the voice of pain. So I said, "Hi, pain, how are you? How are you doing? Nice to meet you. Welcome." And then I spoke to its counterpart, which is, I guess, not the pain. I said, "How are you doing? Da da da." Not as it, to it. And the apex, of course, no difference. Pain was still there. Then I said, "Okay, so what the hell knows that it's aware of this apex, of this pain, of this no pain?" I mean, what? So it's going back to that same thing again. What the hell is it that knows it's aware of being aware? And we're always told, don't know, not knowing, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, I want to know what it is that does know that it's aware. So I just kept going all night. And I'd conk out, swoon, fall asleep, wake up, and carry on. And I would not let go of this. I said, I'm not going to stop doing this until I find the bloody answer. And of course, I didn't find the answer. But I woke up the next day and all the pain had practically gone. And I just thought, okay, that's quite weird. So I've carried on since April doing this question every day. And the pain has almost all gone from my body. No medication, no painkillers, just a little bit of joint pain in a few joints that's probably applicable to my age. I have no idea how it went, but I'm not stopping asking that question. And then, by chance, I looked up a Taoist book on what happens if you force yourself to have experiences early on in practice. And one of the things is people have a experience, but they don't have the ethics, or they don't have the practice, or the various concentration practices that you build up, shamatha, with it. And then terrible things happen. The body gets sick, the body gets in pain, the person starts doing silly things like me, drinking 100 units a week, 150 units a week, smoking 20 cigarettes a day, and trying to be a monk. And they said the cure for this, so I'm quite quick reading through books. I just go, okay, what's the problem? What's the cure? And the cure was you just rest in that space of knowing awareness. So not the not knowing stuff, all that Zen crap. You rest in the knowing awareness. and just stay there as long as possible. And then you keep coming back to it. That, they said, is the cure for the sickness of having an awakening earlier, or an insight earlier that isn't a properly integrated one, or is, not backed up with ethics, good concentration. So I was fascinated. So I'm still doing that. I have no idea where it leads, but my neighbor somehow knows someone through Genpo's Sangha in America. And so we go and have coffees every now and again. We talk about it. And he said he's in his 80s, not very well, quite ill, in pain. And so it's become a new kind of Dharma cafe. We literally go there to talk about what we find works. And he's met hundreds of gurus in his time. And I said, the one thing we're not encouraged to do is all meet together, talk about our experiences, see what works, see what doesn't work, see what worked for one person. Isn't that what they would have done back in the day? Surely. So anyway, that's all I got to say. I mean, I can post the 1 hour interview if you're interested, or the transcript if you're interested. But I think the main point was just wanting to say that maybe we need to look at new ways of being together as a Sangha, talking about experiences or learning ways to relate to our own experiences. And I hope you have some to share too. Or you probably need a pee break and a tea break. I certainly will in a minute. And here's the black cat.
Oh yeah, Seymour. Yeah, thank you, Danny. I raised my hand earlier because I had forgotten what the inciting incident was that sparked that spontaneous dropping off of pain, but it was your practice of, as you kept talking, I realized it was your practice of being aware of the one who knows where.
Yes, exactly.
So speaking about pain, it's interesting, and that you just mentioned that. You brought up such a lot of very interesting, important points. But speaking of pain, about a year ago, maybe more than a year ago, I was thinking about somebody. If people post on Facebook, that they're in pain all the time, and friends of mine, and and probably I knew about your being in pain all the time, and it just breaks your heart. And then I think for some people, maybe not everybody, I don't know, but we really sympathize with that. And I'm wondering if I was thinking about this just the past couple of days, that my thought when about a year ago was, gosh, I'm really sorry that so many of my friends have chronic pain all the time, for years. And I was thinking, I'm so glad that's not me, that I don't have any pains. Well, it's almost like as soon as I said that, but I twisted my ankle, as you know from my campfire story, dressing up as Charo with 4-inch heels, getting drunk and falling off a step. I sprained my ankle, and then my ankle was in pain. And then and I was taking yoga classes at the same time, and then doing some yoga move. I must have exacerbated like some issue in my shoulder, and then my shoulder was in pain. And this was like, I started developing these chronic pains, my ankle, and then my shoulder just got worse and worse and worse over every day. It just got worse and worse and worse. Michael and I started doing our weightlifting, and then you get, the next day after you do more weight, you're in pain, and that just got worse and worse, but it was a good pain. But then also I had, knock on wood, this issue of it's like I'll have a joint that'll be in pain, and it'll get worse and worse, and then it'll move to another joint. it'll get
mm,
worse and
mm.
worse. I don't know what that's about. And then recently it was this joint. And even just the other day, I was gardening and I looked at it and it's like visibly swollen. And I'm like, Michael, look at this. And I don't talk, I hadn't told him, hey, Michael, I'm in pain all the time. It's either this or this or this. And then I remembered something, a little practice that I had, which is just to say no, So, I had the pain and I said no, and by Jove, it's gone away, and it's gone away here. I haven't had it in. This has been the past couple of days, and that had been for months. All these pains, now I still have a little bit of pain because we lifted heavy. Uh, Follow me on Facebook if you'd like to see my lift that made me sore. But anyway, so that was like, and that's this last time, not so much an epiphany, well, maybe a little bit, but it was like a previous epiphany that I had remembered. And anyway, that's my little epiphany pain story.
So Anna, that would be really interesting to look at with, the microphenomenology about the no. What happens just before you say no, when you say no, as you say no, after saying no, before the pain goes. It's fascinating. Wow,
Yeah, I'm
special
excited to read
powers.
your transcript. I'll share it when I post the video. I'll put the links up there, and I'd love to see the video too. All right, I'm ready for others' epiphanies.
Jennifer, you have one? Was that it? Was that the epiphany?
I'm trying to think of it. I have, minor epiphanies every day, it seems
Yeah.
like. But I have been trying to think over, and I haven't come up with what I think of in general when I think of an epiphany. I've thought of actually a couple of times where I went through a dissolution of the self, actually, that seemed like some sort of epiphany out of the flesh, out of the body. When I had a grand mal seizure and was coming out of that, and at first was just experiencing sound. I don't remember. I hope I haven't told this before here, but I just, an EMT was talking to me and I was just experiencing that as pure sensation. I had no conception of language or of self or anything. It was just sensation. And then it sort of rose through levels where I realized that the sound was directed at me. And then the conception of language returned to me. And at each level, I began to feel anxiety when I perceived that this sound was directed at me, and then became more and more anxious as more and more understanding came back to me. But I've always thought of that as a sort of reverse, I don't know if a reverse epiphany, or just if I came out of that seizure into a state of epiphany of some sort. I've just been thinking about things like that, really.
But you were aware the whole way through, and presumably even you had a basic awareness even before things started coming back in.
Very basic. Yeah, there was no boundary between me and the world. I was just a consciousness. I wasn't sort of me. And that
sort of naked awareness, just a bare awareness,
yeah.
Yeah.
That was one.
So it's interesting because the seizure, if you think about what the electricity blow does to the brain, it knocks it out.
Mm-hmm.
But yet you were still aware.
Well, I wasn't for a while. That's
initially,
when I started coming back to awareness. Yeah. And I suppose the other is the bookend to that, where I started in awareness and then dissolved when I found out I had a friend who died terribly. And after a period of 8 days where he was just missing, it was revealed what had been found. And then was just in the suddenness of it. I just dissolved. I don't really remember it clearly. I just remember I sort of came to my feet and started keening. I'd never really understood what keening was when I read about it, but it was just this, it was like the sound just came up like through the middle of me, like a fountain. And my whole, again, there was this complete dissolving of self. All I was that pain and that sound coming up out of me. Those are the two things I think of, really.
Well, they're quite intense and strong.
Yeah, but not really
Yeah.
insight. Epiphany is supposed to be, right, that sudden insight and the revelation of that insight. But those are the things I.
Well, as Sam said at the beginning, he used a different word, and I mean, epiphany. I did it quite tongue in cheek and said a penny for your epiphany, because in the old day, a penny for your thoughts. The thoughts were worth a lot. Penny was worth a lot, and it was like epiphanies aren't worth very much these days, and the pennies aren't worth very much. But it's not necessarily an insight, and I think that was what the researcher was trying to pull out of all of these interviews she'd done with all these meditators. Was it's not necessarily go, aha, now I know, da 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 da. It's just there's some shift. Something happens that's beyond our awareness or beyond our ability to explain it in rational terms, but it has an effect on us and it changes us somehow.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way to talk about it.
No.
No, but I've been struggling more to think of the more common usage sort of epiphany.
Yeah. No, we're here to explore everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I can share on this. Let me know if this lawnmower starts to bother you. There's a lawnmower next door. So, but
you're mowing the lawn, Sam.
Oh no, that's when I get out on the riding lawnmower, and I have to use my cane and sweep around, and it takes me a long time. But it's a fun thing, and one of these days we'll get it on YouTube. But no, but for me with this epiphany thing, my friend, it's really interesting to sit and think about even phenomenology, and to think about how much of my mind chatter I listen to, or how much of my thoughts are like this or whatever. And then really when I come down to it, to realize I'm not really having thoughts. It's kind of embarrassing almost that, all this was phenomena that I've been responding to. And then I think I can shift my body or think of things slightly different than, whoa, this big cluster of whatever I call my own self thoughts, or the repeating things, or whatever it is, it could be totally different. And I can't quite point to the experience and go, this is the experience of that aha moment. But it's almost the fact that ha 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 ha, and that kind of sound is going on all the time. And that I at least cover it over with what I call my reality or my self or whatever it is. But to realize that is make-believe somehow seems to tap me into so much more that's beyond the self. But I know all of it's illusion. I don't know. It's a very strange way to be in, especially when we relate to pain or when we relate to things like depression or whatever it is. Because I'll sit here on this call and talk about phenomenology and things, and then in the moment really struggle with it. So it's interesting if I can sit and take what is coming up for me right now and take this out into my everyday life and notice the epiphanies, like, oh, what am I doing depressed? I had a body posture that was like that. Or why am I responding to my solar plexus as if this anxiety or whatever the nervous system thing is everything in the entire world, and it dominates everything, and pay attention. And it just turned out to be a solar plexus. Silly things like that. Can I, because of this call, be aware of the epiphanies or the things that the subconscious is trying to tell me desperately in my days that otherwise, no, I don't notice, and I'm suffering and whatever. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I look at it, is not what is the epiphany, can I describe it or something, but just to be in awe that I really am so limited in scope sometimes that I can't quite explain the epiphany that's going on all the time. That kind of thing helps me when I get stuck in my depression or anxiety or whatever it is. And I hope it makes sense for you guys too.
Yeah, great. Do you mean that we don't see everything that there is, Sam? Is that what you mean?
I think so. Like the whole we only
Yeah.
use 10% of our brains kind of thing.
Well, we use 100% of our brains, but we only process 1% of what we experience or see.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And then we only see 5% of the universe anyway. So that's 1/2000th of the universe that we can process at any moment.
I mean, if
I
we
don't,
human beings actually had to face that kind of embarrassment with how great we think we are all the time, without that filter, we might as well just pack it in, you know. But thank God we are the way we are, and have some sense of denial about how little we as human beings are, you know. Okay, well, I love sharing. So I'll mute myself, and
it's
yeah.
lovely to hear you, Sam.
Sam, thank you. That was awesome.
I always think of that was that famous phrase from that, is it Sister Act? Denial, denial. That ain't a river in Egypt, honey. No, I ain't talking about a river in Egypt. Marek, come on. Reveal.
Thank you for the very interesting topic for this meeting. And the person who interviewed you that you talk about was this Clara Seeger that you wrote in email about.
Yeah.
So I've Googled her before the meeting, and what was what I've noticed at some on some web page, there is an information that she meditates herself, and that she confesses that she does it 2 hours a day, which seemed perhaps a lot for the person who wrote this, and I felt relieved. Yeah, well, first of all, I feel relieved being with you all, because I know that many of you share the same, I don't know how to call it, a hobby or addiction or whatever it is, meditation. But
an addictive hobby.
Yes, and I must confess that it eats more and more time of my life, simply, and the day only has 24 hours, so it turned out that not much is left for anything else. So and this, of course, on some level, this seems strange. So to be in the company of the people who also, feel the same or are handicapped in the same way, it's relieving. So this was one thing. I still don't know what this microphenomenology means, what this word micro, but I've been wondering what I don't know if you know what are her findings, because you told us about her findings that we are not able to
see them.
Experience. Yeah,
you will be able to, but she's got to re-interview some of the monks and nuns and practitioners. And either put them in the scanner. It's called an fMRI scanner. I think there was a French Tibetan monk, Mathieu Ricard, who used to do a lot of that, and Tsoknyi Rinpoche. And then she needs to re-interview the people and do. There's a little bit more to it than what we talked about today. But the idea is that all the people in this department, they all meditate. They're all connected to people that meditate and that belong to the Mind and Life, the Dalai Lama's separate neuroscience thing to discuss, that investigates the source of consciousness itself and awareness. So I think it's absolutely incredible that there are people that are doing this. And at her age, she's in her late 50s, and she's willing to go back and do another PhD to get the research done for the benefit of all the people that come after us. So, yeah,
Also about
fantastic.
yeah, about the epiphanies when you wrote in an email when you encouraged us to think about the epiphanies, apart from my all my own memories, what come to my mind were two things. One, this is the Book of Luminous Things. This is the anthology of poetry by Polish poet Czesław Miłosz. He spent like a half of his life in the state teaching Slavic literature, and in his it was this anthology he compiled. This is from other poets that he compiled quite old in his age, in his 70s. And I was more like in my 20s, in my early 30s, I was more into exact sciences, not so much into art and literature. Then I struggled with my thesis in sociology, and I started to read things just to it was difficult for me to write, and I found out that it's easier for me to have some examples of good writings which I found in literature and in poetry in particular. And it was like the first book of poetry that spoke to me. And there are some haikus, some short stories, and actually each of these poems that he found can be called epiphany in some way. And the epiphany, there is a chapter that he is the name of the chapter, and he said that the epiphany is that it's a Greek word. He explains that it means the appearance or arrival of divinity among mortals, or its recognition, and there are a familiar shape of a man or a woman. Epiphany thus interrupts the everyday flow of time and enters as one privileged moment when we intuitively grasp a deeper, more essential reality hidden in things or persons. So this was...
Wow, that's beautiful, Marek. It really is, yeah.
It's this and there are a few poems in this. As I said, there is only one chapter about epiphanies, but I found I love many poems. I will not be able to read 300 of them today to you, but I found one poem that is simple enough, and I hope I will be able to read it fast to you. In the middle of the road, there was a stone. There was a stone in the middle of the road. There was a stone. In the middle of the road, there was a stone. Never should I forget this event in the life of my fatigued retinas. Never should I forget that in the middle of the road, there was a stone. There was a stone in the middle of the road. In the middle of the road, there was a stone. So that's in the chapter of Epiphanies. And I don't know if it's possible to share a screen today, or is it possible to share a screen?
I have no idea how you do that.
No.
Hold on, I'll see. Okay. Yeah, you should be able to share now.
Okay.
Is it
I
happening?
love that.
Or maybe not. You cannot see anything.
Not yet. No.
Well, you're
I
doing
love
that. I'm
that.
gonna. Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say, Danny?
Oh no, just I love the definition of epiphany from your poets writer.
Yeah.
It's great.
And okay, so I won't be able to. It looks like I need to do something in my system preferences. So I would not waste time for this. So I will tell you what was on this video. This was my black cat that was she has a healthy appetite, and she was from she was what I call the Cinderella, the weakest of the litter, and she spent first few months of her life with the feral family, and she was always the last one to eat, and oftentimes she didn't eat at all. And when she when she came to me, like maybe she was 8 months old or something like this, I remember that for the next 19 years that she was with me, that every day I saw an appreciation for every single meal that she was eating. And I in this video that I wanted to share you, but for some technical reasons I cannot do it. Her epiphany was tuna and sardines was the name. Epiphany. And when I looked at her, every time I saw a disbelief. Am I going to be fed again today? Am I going to be like, so are you going to give me a food like every day? I can't believe it. And she was, she never eat too much. She was not overweight, but it's not of this. It was just appreciation in her for every single meal. And as I said, it was as if this was an epiphany for her every single time. And in this poem also, this very, very simple seemingly thing of meeting a stone. Somebody thought it is important to remember it as an experience. And it came to my mind when you wrote about Epiphanies, how much it is the experience itself, and how much is our ability to appreciate it, what happens. Like in the case of this black cat, that she was for her, was every single time she was able to do it, and so this was my association. And you also wrote about us reluctance to discuss these epiphanies, these experiences. And it reminded me of the book that you shared with us, Danny, a few months ago about Taoism and Buddhism. And if you remember, you sent us. Well, anyway, there was this Taoism mentioned, and as a teenager, there are this famous thoughts in Taoism that the deepest truth cannot be expressed, and it is beyond words, and probably this is what is similar to this is the similarity perhaps between Taoism and Zen, and maybe there is some influence, but it could explain the reluctance, why we don't want to discuss it, not necessarily because it is forbidden, but because we feel that we would not do a justice unless we are maybe in art. I don't know what you think. I don't know. I wonder what Jennifer or what Anna think about the ability the ability to express something like the epiphanies in the artwork, in the form of a poem or a painting, or.
I think art is epiphany, and I think particularly poetry is always an attempt to write epiphany. It relies on it. I mean, I think maybe the documentary poets currently would disagree with me on that, but certainly lyric poetry is that.
Something that came up for me, Mark, when you were talking, and I hope that maybe when we post the blog of this, you can put in the comments the book, the author, and the definition of epiphany. But what came up for me was that poem about the rock. That maybe every moment is an opportunity for epiphany. Maybe there are epiphanies like in every single fucking atom, or everything, all when we just pay attention and are aware. Maybe that would be a little overwhelming, but like that poem of the rock, I feel like when you were reading it, I feel like I wrote it, like, I totally, Richard, are you there? Are you on board? It's good to have you here. But I think you're muted if you're still there.
And Anna, I just wanted to add yet again, that if we miss 99.95% of everything that's happening, you can be sure there's epiphanies everywhere. I mean, I just find it mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah. I'm gonna,
as you said, maybe our brains couldn't take it. Maybe it'd be too much.
There is also one thing, because Danny talked today about our not being willing to or eager to talk about epiphanies or about clinging and letting go. So there is, of course, that the experience that we have, that it's not that it's not carved in stone, but it changes all the time as we live, and we forget, of course, the meaning changes. Some things that we thought were of little importance gain this importance in hindsight. Some experiences that we thought were, earth-shaking, we find that now it was a machia. You were just deluded, and it simply changes all the time. And about this clinging that you said, what I realized in my own life, in my own experiences, is that those so-called those peak experiences, the euphoric experiences, that they quite often were accompanied later on with depression. Sometimes called by our inability to grasp it or to repeat it. And so, to me, I was explaining it to myself like a drug, that when you get high, then later on you have a hangover afterwards. As you know, in teenager, in my early 20s, I kind of feel relief when I realize that I don't have to chase those experiences anymore, that I can, just be in my this is maybe I will leave the floor to other people, because
I thought you were just about to tell us something then, Marek. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I realized that I was talking about the books, about my cat, but I was kind of avoiding my own history. So I wanted to be more honest, more open, not to hold back so much, but there is also this ongoing question: what are those experiences that we want to have? And there is also
and who's having them?
Yeah.
And who is having them?
Who is having them? Yeah. There is also a wise saying, I think, by Dogen, that if we try to gain some experience, it's only a delusion. If we allow the other phenomena, other things to influence us, he said, this is enlightenment, really. So maybe there is a saying that that it's the progress in the practice. It's not to know more and more, to get more and more experience, but just the opposite, to know less and less, and to be more.
So So what do you think about this idea that when we talk about our experiences, we actually have less clinging, and somehow they diminish, and maybe we lose what was important, but also we lose all the extraneous stuff. But actually, by not talking about them, they stay, and maybe they're even distorted when they stay. So it's not that we move on by not talking. So it's just the idea that it is taboo in Tibetan and Zen, maybe not in other cultures and other traditions, to discuss it. So it's just an interesting idea. We're all about
I,
seeing how we can do things differently now. And
yeah, I would say that when the time goes on, when there is a distance in time between the experiences itself and the present moment, that it also has a similar effect of forgetting, of not clinging so much, of being capable, being more open to talk about it. And what I like very much in your suggestion is that we should feel free, to explore, to look for ourselves, not to be limited to what we are allowed to what we are supposed to. And it's sort of liberating that we are just on our own now. And I don't remember, Danny, have you been with Kanzeon? Because you said you were a monk. Is it
yeah,
because
yeah, for
I
38 years. Oh my God.
so probably we were going to different retreats, because I don't seem
Yeah.
to remember you. But
Yeah, I didn't go to Poland, but other places, yeah.
but it was the same. It was the same, more or less, time that you were practicing.
Yeah,
I
1980s, yeah, onwards. Yeah,
1980s.
yeah,
I remember that the Genpo Roshi was coming to the Netherlands, to the
yeah,
UK, and
yeah, yeah,
from I think 1986 to Poland too. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
mhm.
So, Marek, you still have skirted around
Well, this
telling
thing
us
about discussing
about.
our phenomena, how we experience things, I think
Yeah.
as we
So,
describe it with each
well,
other and as we share it with each other, we tap into this part of our brain that more accurately describes the phenomenon.
Yeah, we tap into something that's
Uh-oh.
not just our usual everyday recall. Yeah. And that's why the Mind and Life Institute, which is the Dalai Lama's the head, and then there's all these scientists, neuroscientists, they're all Buddhists, they're all practitioners, and they've been meeting for years. And there's a lot of money invested into trying to go a little bit into maybe it's more Western idea that we explore it. And, the Eastern idea is different. Um, but yeah, it's a growing phenomena. But Marek, do you have, you said you've
well,
been skirting around your epiphany, not telling us it, telling everything us other things, but not it. Is that still the case, or are you going?
well,
Uh,
I remember in my as a teenager, I thought I experienced some things that were. It was before I even started meditating, and funny thing is how it comes, because in my case, like they say there are two difficult moments in your life, when you are a teenager and then midlife crisis. So both of those times were meaningful for me and difficult. So when I was those epiphanies so often comes to us and in time of need, when we are in difficult situations. And it was also in your story to an extent. So it's not when we are, happy and playful when they happen. So in my case, I remember experiences that were, strange to me. Just from reading the books of Jiddu Krishnamurti when I was 15, 16 years old, before I started to even there were the first Eastern things that I came across. There was a library of, there was a Polish Indian some society that published some books translated into Polish, some books by Jiddu Krishnamurti in 1930s, and they were still available when I was a teenager. And there is in some Zen koan, there is a story of somebody going through some experiences just from hearing words. So in my case, it was just from reading this Krishnamurti words, and it was so relieving and lasted for 4 days that I started to read more, and I wasn't sure that I can even talk to anybody about it, because it felt so different from ordinary experience. And a few years later, I was my hobby was photography, and I spent long hours in the dark room listening to the radio and on this radio there was some Zen stories by there was it turned out it was there was some Zen stories translated by and I don't know if you remembered Małgosia Braunek and her husband Andrzej. So he translated some Zen stories into Polish, and she wrote those stories. And that's I realized from those stories that you can talk about those experiences, that there is some, that I was probably not the only person that it happened, that experiences some things. And it was, kind of relieving. So there were several experiences in I think when I was teenagers and in my 20s that I was sort of attached to, that I thought were important, but I'm not sure anymore what it was. I don't know if you what more shall I say? But
whatever you like. Whatever you want.
But it's I still keep thinking, what is ordinary, what is extraordinary, what is and it comes to my mind a Korean Zen master that somebody asked him about the supernatural phenomena. He showed
Sun San Sunim.
yeah, he showed his hand. He looked at his finger that that this finger is moving. This is the most. This is the most unusual thing that like those rock on the road. What is when do we start to call things special, and when it is when the ordinary ends, and when those gods arrive, this is to an extent up to us to decide or to perceive it, perhaps. So it's a blur. It's not clear for me. That's why it's when it is, but also to like this explanation of epiphany, that it might be a recognition of those gods entering our life. So when do we recognize it? When do we recognize something special? That there was something special in this black cat that appreciated this food. It took me some time, certainly, to realize. Well, this is really. I'm really blessed by her company, that she wants to be with me, and again, it was up to me to realize it, not necessarily. I could easily.
Not the cat, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, the cat had the epiphany, but you had your epiphany of the cat's epiphany.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's good. But Marek, can you put the title of that book and the definition and the poem in the blog?
Okay.
I think that'd be nice to see. Thank you.
Danny, do you like me? If you like, I can email it to you, and you can judge by yourself.
Okay. But is it's like a file? Is it just a what you call it?
I can either scan it or type it and send it to this.
Okay.
So this introduction to this that you like it was from this.
Yes.
To this.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So, well, that's nice. And then, does anybody else? I think Anna's gone to drive Mike to the airport. There you go. Richard or Sam, do you want to say anything, or Jennifer? Otherwise, I'm going to head off to have my bits and pieces done. Sam, Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it feels like what's already been said has been real sufficient. I mean, I could talk about this a lot, but it's bringing up things for me that's like looking at things with a fresh eyes,
Yeah. Well, we've got another meeting next Friday or Sunday. And Anna said there's another thing happening.
Oh, wow.
Next Sunday?
Zen Circle next Sunday.
It's on Sunday, not Friday. Okay, I'll better put that in my diary now. Have I got it? Yeah. Oh, Sunday. Okay. Where have you got the email for Sunday?
There was an email with a list of them that she sent.
Ah, okay. Sunday the 30th of June. Yeah,
Mhm.
a bit later. Okay, well, big hug to you all, and nice to see you.
All
See you
right.
next week.
Bringing up this topic, it was real interesting.
Mark, will you email it to the group email to Anna, and then she'll send it on to all of us? Or do you want to email it to me? You have my email anyway, but if you want to send it to the others or put it on the
Yeah,
blog.
I can send to you and to Anna, and that's
Yeah.
the image that I have. And if you decide to, we can put it on the blog or you
Yeah,
know.
I think Anna would like that. She said so. Yeah, yeah.
So in this book that I mentioned, these are poems by other poets, but he also wrote this. I don't know, Jennifer, is Czesław Miłosz known in the
Oh, yeah.
States?
And that book is a famous book, yeah. I mean, in the poetry world.
Yeah, but he wrote himself a poetry, but he wrote in Polish the poetry, so it's translated into English. And
He's a major poet. I mean, among poets in this country, he's a major poet. Yeah.
I love his own poetry, but I also remember this famous saying that poetry is what is lost in translation. So it's often comes to my mind some Polish poetry, but I know I'm not able to that. First of all, even if there are translations, it's not the same. And
Lost in translation, but it's also found in translation. You know, things are found in it. It's not the same poem language to language.
Also, this is you know almost beyond my you know. I'm able, again, in English, I'm able to appreciate the simplest things like haiku, of course, and other things, but many things requires more better command of the language that the you know the person, the native speaker, yeah. Something like you. So we are immersed in the language to an extent into which we are born, and it's good we can somehow communicate to the extent that we can.
Okay, I'm gonna head off. So say goodbye. Do you want me to leave the meeting open, or I don't think.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm leaving now. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then
Okay.
yeah.
Ciao,
I'm
ciao.
probably the last one. Yeah, thank you for a very interesting meeting.
Ditto. Same. Thank you. Okay, big hug.